Years ago, I had a friend whose mother worked in the emergency department of the hospital, and that came with some stories, right? It came with some stories. And one day we were in the office and we were sending out some mail, and we had an envelope, and it was not the kind that are already pre sticky, it was the kind that you needed to wet. And my friend said, oh, where's one of those little envelope wetters? I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know what that is. She said, oh, no, it's like a stick, when you like wet an envelope with it. I was like, why would you need that? Don't people just lick envelopes? The story that she told me has proceeded to haunt me to this day, and I will never lick another envelope in my whole life. And I tell everyone I meet not to ever lick an envelope in their life because the horrors. So this man came in to the emergency department and he said, man, my tongue really itches. I've taken antihistamines, I have brushed and I can't figure out what it is, and I just can't take it anymore. I'm ready to rip my tongue out of my head. And so they get to looking. Well, they decide they're just going to cut it open a little bit. They're just going to like cut it open to see what was going on inside because it looked like it was moving. The flesh of the tongue looked like it was moving. Do you want to know why? It's because when they cut it open, they found maggots. They found larvae. They found maggots, larvae in the tongue, because the man licked envelopes. Yeah, and there was larvae on the strip, and then he licked, and then it embedded in his tongue, and that's a real story. That's not one of these like scary internet stories. That's like a real story from a real person that worked in a real local ED, and it just doesn't sit right with me. That's truly the shit from nightmares. So never lick another envelope in your life unless you want the same fate.
This woman had to have some kind of major surgery, and she ended up in a rehabilitation facility. She said it was a nice facility. She said tons of nurses, doctors walking around. But she couldn't help but notice that there was this one nurse who never talked, never spoke. She would just walk in, give her pills, and walk back out. After about a week of being at the facility, she decided to ask one of the nurses. She said, hey, who is this nurse? She's usually here on these days, and she usually comes in at this time. And the nurse was like, the person you're describing, I don't know who that is. So because she talked to a million people, she decided the next time she saw the nurse, she was going to take a picture of her. So the day comes where she sees this woman, the nurse that she was describing to everyone. And the nurse never looks at her. She never says anything. She hands her the pill cup and she turns her back towards her. So the woman was like, okay, since I can't get her face, I'm going to get the back of her. Maybe somebody knows her from the back of her. And she picks up her phone to take a photo. She didn't have it on silent, and it made the click sound. When the nurse heard the clicking, she turned around and it completely went dark in the room. The woman is terrified because when she looks towards the door closes by itself. She doesn't see anyone coming in. She doesn't see anyone going out. The woman starts panicking because then she feels hands all over her, holding her down, her hands, her feet, her upper body. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how long this was happening to her, but she just knows that when another nurse walked in, it completely stopped. A week goes by and the woman is walking around with physical therapy, and when she's with her therapist, she just happens to glance to her left in one of the rooms. She sees that nurse again, and she decides, I'm going to do some investigating because she's sure that nurse is not alive. While investigating, she found out that the rehab facility she was in was not the original building. They demolished the original building in 1980, and it was built in 1910. So she asked them, she said, do you guys have old stuff from the building? Do you have pictures of what it used to look like? Pictures of nurses? The supervisor had all of these old framed pictures of nurses who worked there over the years. The way that you were describing the nurse in the email, this is what I got. I guess I just want to know why you thought a nurse that was wearing the whole 1910s, 1920s get up was your nurse. But anyway, moving on. She gets home and now everything is fine. She's feeling like she's getting back to normal. She's able to move around by herself quite a bit. Her husband, on the other hand, he said that she's acting weird in her sleep. She said, how am I acting weird? He said, you just been sleepwalking. That's something that you never did. She's trying to find a comfortable spot. She turns towards the door and in walks the nurse from the facility. She tries to wake her husband up, but he's not budging. So she, tries to jump up, and the woman pushes her back down in the bed and places her hand over her mouth. While she's glancing around the room with her mouth still covered by the nurse, she clear as day sees her bed is surrounded by familiar faces from those photos that she looked at. She sees some of the patients. She sees nurses and doctors. She was hoping that her husband would wake up and he would see a glimpse of this so he knows that she is not crazy, because she told him about it and he does not believe her. She passes out, and that's all she remembers. She remembers coming to in the morning and remembers her husband coming to wake her up. She's never seen a ghost or any of that, so this is new for her. She doesn't know how to react. She doesn't know who to go to or what to do. Months have passed, and things have gotten worse. The woman is pregnant now, and she still sees the nurse lurking around the house. The woman decides to call the rehab facility where she was staying. She tells them, oh, this is my room. I don't know if you remember me. My name is this. And the nurse on the other end of the phone was like, oh, yeah, I remember you. And she says, remember when I looked at those photos and X, Y, and Z? And she's like, yeah. She's like, what kind of nurses were those? Like, what was that building before it was demolished? And she told her it was an insane asylum. The woman is close to her due date, and she really is just panicking. She doesn't know what to do, mainly because she's about to bring her baby into this home that is being haunted by an insane asylum nurse. While her husband's at work, she's walking down the stairs with the laundry basket, and she can clear as day hear someone humming in her ear the happy birthday song. She quickly turns around, and she's face to face with the insane asylum nurse. Before she could take a step back, the nurse pushed her down the stairs. The baby was born prematurely, but her and her husband are terrified because this insane asylum nurse just won't go away. They see her on the baby monitor camera. They can hear her on the baby monitor in the kitchen whenever they're downstairs, when they're upstairs. It just never ends. Girl, now you got my blood pressure high and got me worried about you.
Yo, I need to give a shout out to my mom because she's the one who sent me this Spanish story to translate. It's coming from Relato Nocturno, and the title is Las Almas que Vagan en la Carretera. There was this one night where I couldn't go to sleep. It was 4 in the morning, and I saw a notification pop up of my mom, and she was sending me scary stories. I'm like, why are you awake at this time? She's like, I couldn't fall asleep. She was at home, couldn't fall asleep, listening to scary stories. This is where I get it from. Mind you, the one that she sent me at that time was so creepy. Wait, do I still have it? Let me show you. Just in case you think I'm joking. 4:40 in the morning. Ready? Why was that necessary? Why did she send me this at 4 in the morning? That wasn't even a story. That was just like a scary thing, right? And then you hear in the background, the devil is here and it's coming for me. The devil is here and it's coming. I immediately exit this shit. Like, what the fuck? Oh, it looks like I responded, now I'm scared. And she said, ha 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 ha. J-A-J-A-J-A. Like a Mexican mom would. Almost forgot what this video was about. The story that she sent me, that was the story that I'm gonna translate for you. I'm so sorry if you made it to this point. I love you so much. Thank you. So this guy says that he has family that lives in San Juan del Rio in Querétaro. When he was around 10 years old, he went to go visit the family, but he ended up getting really sick. That's when his dad and the grandfather decided to take him to the hospital, and it was around 1 in the morning. Unfortunately, when they were on their way there, the truck completely broke down. They were able to move the truck to the side of the road, and he said that his dad called an uncle to see if he can come and help him with the truck or like jump the battery, and the uncle agreed. So on the side of the road was also this really big rock, and he said that all 3 of them sat there while they waited for the uncle to come. He explains that the area where they were, it wasn't like mountainous or like there was no trees. It was literally flat ground and you can see far ahead. So as he's sitting on this rock, he said that he turns to the left and he just so happened to see a really old man walking on the road. He said the man looked really old. He was even hunched, but what he thought was weird was that he hadn't seen that man when they passed by, because again, even though they're stuck on the side of the road, they had still came from the same direction, and if that man was walking, they would have seen him on the way to the hospital. He also said this old man was walking so slow, so again, they would have seen him if they had passed him on the side of the road. So he just kept thinking to himself, where did this man come from, as he's like staring at him. So again, he's 10 years old, he's looking at this old man, and he's just thinking, where the fuck did he come from? And that is when his grandfather got really close to his ear and says, don't look at him in the face, turn your head another direction. He didn't question his grandfather. He immediately turns his head to a different direction, and he said that the entire time that it took the old man to pass by in front of him, he didn't look at the old man. He was looking down, he was looking at the other side. When the old man finally passed in front of them and was a little bit distance away, he turned to his grandfather and he asked him if he knew the old man. His grandfather told him no, but that there was a belief there where they lived that if you see elderly people on the side of the road walking in the middle of the night, or even women, that they are not alive, that these are people who have passed and it's just their apparition, that they could have died in accidents or like weird things and that their souls are just there. When his grandfather finished telling him that, he said that he was so curious that he turned to see in the direction where the old man had gone to, and that he was no longer there. And again, that is impossible because there is no trees, it was flat ground, you could see at a good distance. And how is it possible that the old man was no longer in the direction where he was walking at? He said finally his uncle got there and they ended up fixing the truck. The entire time that he was there waiting for them to fix it, he couldn't avoid looking around, like looking to see if he would see the old man or he would see anybody else. Like his curiosity definitely got the better of him. But of course he didn't see anyone. He says that even though years have passed since that happened, anytime that he's driving out in the middle of nowhere at nighttime, he can't help but feel very scared and always looks around, hoping that he never sees anybody walking on the side of the road in the middle of the night while he is driving. But what do you guys think?
The man I married, who is now my ex, thought he was using me to become rich because I was left with a huge inheritance. He didn't know I overheard his conversation and I still went ahead to marry him. I married him because I wanted him to learn a lesson he would never forget. Before I explain what happened, let me take you back to the beginning. When my parents died, they left me a very large inheritance. It wasn't something I showed off about, but my boyfriend at the time knew I had money. And honestly, I didn't think it would change anything between us. He was working on a small business, so I supported him whenever I could. I gave him money to put into the business. Sometimes when he had financial problems, I helped him. I thought I was helping the man I was going to build a future with. Then one day, I overheard him talking to someone. I wasn't supposed to hear that conversation. He was telling the person that marrying me would solve all his financial problems because I had money and he didn't love me. He even said he didn't understand why he should struggle when he had a woman with a huge inheritance. I stood there listening. The painful part wasn't even what he said. It was how confidently he said it. He wasn't planning a future with me. He was planning what to do with my money. I could have confronted him immediately. I could have left, yes, I know. But I decided to do something else. I transferred almost all my money into a new account that he knew nothing about. Then I started preparing for our wedding. He thought he was marrying a wealthy woman. He had no idea he was marrying a woman who had just become very careful with her money. After the wedding, I told him something that changed everything in the marriage. I told him I lost almost everything. I lied that there had been serious problems with my inheritance and that most of the money was gone. The look on his face told me everything. He didn't even know how to hide his disappointment. From that day, I stopped giving him money. The lifestyle he thought he was going to enjoy disappeared. For months, I pretended to be struggling financially. I cooked at home. I reduced my spending. I acted like someone who was trying to survive, and I watched my husband slowly change. The sweet man I knew disappeared. He became very irritated whenever I asked for anything. He started complaining about bills. He started telling me how expensive it was to have a wife who couldn't contribute financially. Then something happened that confirmed everything I had suspected. The woman he had introduced to me before we got married as just friends started coming around our house. At first, I tried to ignore it, but eventually I confronted him. And do you know what he told me? He said I had become useless to him. He said when we were dating, he thought I could help him financially. But now that I was supposedly broke, I had become a burden and he was now with the love of his life. Imagine hearing that from the man you married. I did not fight him, and I simply kept watching because by then I had already made up my mind. Then I discovered something else. I somehow got access to his Momo password. And remember, before all this happened, I had already given him a lot of money to grow his business. Money he believed he was going to enjoy because he thought I had nothing left. One day, I made a large transfer from his account to mine. I took back what belonged to me and I deleted the message. Then I did something he never expected. The house we were living in was mine and I sold it. He did not know. I quietly handled everything and waited. When everything was ready, I filed for a divorce. That was when his confidence disappeared. He couldn't understand why I was leaving him. He thought I was leaving because I was broke. He thought I had nothing until he discovered the truth. I was never broke. I had moved my money before marrying him. The inheritance was still there. The business money I had given him was being accounted for, and the house was no longer his place to live in. Suddenly, the man who had called me a burden started looking for me everywhere. He contacted mutual friends. He begged people to speak to me. Some of them even called me saying he wanted another child. But I was done because the woman he wanted wasn't me. He wanted my money. He wanted the life my inheritance could have given him. And when he thought I had nothing, he showed me exactly who he was. I'm not saying everyone should go and marry someone just to punish them. But you see me, I am my own role model. I will not allow any man hurt me.
I fell asleep with my light on. Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepy Pasta. Let's get into today's scary story. I can't move. The words repeat in my head, slow and flat. My eyes are closed, but the room is still there. A dull orange glow pressed against the inside of my eyelids. The lamp. I left it on. I remember that much. I try to open my eyes. Nothing. I try to lift my hand. Nothing. My brain is the only thing I can feel. In, out, too loud in my chest. Then something else joins it. A low buzzing, not in the room, in my ears. Like power in the walls, like the house itself is humming. It swells until it's all I can hear, then fades just enough to remind me it's still there. I swallow. It doesn't work. From the hallway, there's a whisper, so soft I almost miss it. Not words, just the shape of a voice. It stops. The buzzing fills the space it leaves. Then the whisper comes back, closer. This time I catch something in it. A breath, and then a word. My name. So quiet it barely exists. Cold prickles crawl up my arms. My door is open. I know I left it open. The whisper drifts past the doorway, fades, then returns again, back and forth like someone pacing just out of sight. Another breath. Then a word pushed out on warm air, low and soft, like it's meant for only me. Here. I try to call out. My throat doesn't move. The whisper breaks into pieces. Little breaths, little sounds, too close together to be wind, too uneven to be anything else. Then footsteps. One creak in the floor. A pause. Another. They pass the doorway. Stop. The buzzing grows louder in my ears. The footsteps turn around, then come back. This time they don't pass. They stop right outside my room. I hold my breath without meaning to. Nothing happens. Then one slow step crosses the threshold. The orange glow behind my eyelids dims, just slightly, as if something tall has moved between me and the light. Something is in my room. I feel it before it touches me. The air changes. The space beside the bed fills. The mattress sinks. Slow, gentle. The weight settles in beside me, close enough that the sheet tightens between our bodies. Warm. My heart pounds so hard it hurts. I try to scream. My mouth won't open. The bed creaks as it shifts, fitting itself to me. A leg, a hip, a body pressed along my back. Then it breathes, right against the back of my neck. The air is warm, damp. It lifts the tiny hairs there and lets them fall again. The sound is deep and close, not matching my own breath at all. I am completely still. One breath, then another, each one closer than the last until it feels like its mouth is almost touching my skin. Something inside me pushes, fights. My chest jerks. Air tears into my lungs in a broken gasp. My fingers twitch. The breathing behind me stops. I drag in another breath. My toes curl. My jaw cracks open. The weight lifts. The mattress rises as the space behind me empties. I can move. I lurch forward, sucking in air, rolling onto my back. My eyes fly open. The room is empty. The lamp glows. The door is still open. The hallway is dark and quiet. Nothing is there. I sit up, shaking. Then I touched the back of my neck. It's still warm.
The person that sent me the story called it, I woke up there. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hi, Indie Matrix. Hi. So first off, let me just say how much I love your content. When I first found your channel, I was instantly captivated and suddenly felt less alone, knowing there are so many others who encounter strange, scary, and sometimes amazing things. I love this. That's the whole point of this channel. And also because I just love reading this stuff. It's so cool. I have a few stories. However, I wanted to share one in particular. It's quick and not very exciting. We'll be the judge of that, my friend. Yet it left a lasting impression on me as to what the hell had happened to me. This was about 14 to 15 years ago. I was a full-time private caregiver for a quadriplegic man. After work one day, I decided to take the bus to my adoptive parents' house. For anyone from the OC, California area, I work in La Habra and took the bus all the way to Tustin, Tustin, which I took about 1.5 hours, more or less. When I got to their home, it was around 12:30-ish. My adoptive parents had 2 couches in their living room. One was positioned vertically and the other was positioned horizontally. They were sitting on the vertical side playing video games, and I was laying on the horizontal side just laying on my phone. I had suddenly felt exhausted and let them know I was going to take a little cat nap. And here's where it gets weird. I then woke up. I was awake. I knew where I was. I knew what I had done that day. I knew that I lay down for a nap. But when I woke up, it wasn't in my normal timeline. I had woken up exactly where I was when I fell asleep. My parents were also in the same place doing the same thing. I looked around and then I looked at the cable box that had the time, and it said something that I interpreted to be 9:00 a.m., which obviously confused the shit out of me. After rubbing my eyes for a second and shaking off that sleepy feeling, I looked down the hall as something was walking up to me. Right then, my heart went to my tummy and my knees felt really weak. Thank God I was still sitting down because their dog, Dina, who had just recently had to be put down due to severe pain and cancer, was there and just waddled up to me with her little butt shaking with sheer excitement. I just gasped and I yelled out, "Oh my God, Dina?" And I looked around confused as hell. My parents then looked at me also confused as hell. I started petting her and I felt her. I felt her fur, her wiggling, her wet nose, her little kisses against my cheek. She wasn't supposed to be here, yet here she was. She was so happy to see me, and I was just as happy, albeit confused, but happy nonetheless. That's when I heard my name and my mom's voice saying, "Tiff, Tiff." I looked at her, but her lips weren't moving. I started hyperventilating and I could feel and hear my heart pounding, and then I just opened my eyes again, and I was back. I sat straight up, looking around and breathing so rapidly I almost fainted from lightheadedness. I just looked at my mom and I was like, "Dude, was I not already awake? I was asleep?" I looked at the time and it was 1:45 p.m. They both just looked at me like, "What the hell are you smoking, Tiff?" I took that nap completely sober, just FYI. To this day, I still can't wrap my mind around what I experienced. While I was so grateful to see Dina again and feeling like she probably just wanted to say hello to me, although she wasn't my only doggie. She loved me so much. Her little pug snorts whenever she saw me always filled my heart with happiness. It was that same excitement she gave me when she saw me there, wherever there was. Maybe she just wanted to let me know that she was okay and happy, and so I could let them know. I have always been an extremely intuitive person and spiritual, so maybe that's why she chose me. I'm not sure, but wow, just wow. It was an experience I will never forget because I was absolutely awake wherever I went. I woke up in the same place, just on a different timeline, I think. Has anyone else experienced this? I wish I could visually show what it was like, but I did not feel like a dream or a lucid dream. I'm aware of those, and I usually am aware when I'm dreaming. This was not that. I woke up there and then got called back and woke back up in my proper timeline. Thank you for reading. Have a great day, spiritual fam. The end. First of all, this was exciting and interesting, and I'm so glad that you shared it with us. Second of all, yes, I was going back and forth between, was it a dream where your dog was visiting you to say hi, but I don't think that was it. Because the other one is what you said, which is you visited another timeline in which your dog was alive. And I think that was what it was. Because of the fact that you said that it did not feel like a dream, it did not feel like a lucid dream. You've experienced those things before and you know what they sound, what they feel like. And it did not feel like that. Because of the fact also, I think it's weird. Hold on. I was just thinking about the way that you said that the dog ran up to you, like she was so excited to see you, and that she was like, not surprised to see you there, but like so excited to see you there. I wonder if the dog, because I feel like animals are very intuitive and have abilities. I wonder if the dog in that timeline knew that it wasn't you from that timeline, that it was you from another timeline. And maybe the dog also knows that she is not alive in your timeline. Does this make sense? I don't know if this is if you guys think this is like too much for a dog in another timeline to know and feel, but maybe like she knew you were from another timeline and she missed you. Does that make sense? And she's like, oh my God, hi, it's so good to see you. But either way, it 100,000% sounds like you literally went and visited another timeline so that you could see your dog. I don't know if it's because you want to see your dog or your dog wanted to see you or whatever, but I think it's crazy that like your mom in this timeline called you and it woke you up back into this timeline. What do you guys think? Have you experienced anything like this before? And thank you so much for sharing your story.
This is episode 2 of Scary Ass Stories that y'all send me. For the sake of the story, I will be calling the person who sent me this email Alex and her friend Janie. So Alex and Janie live in this town in Alaska that doesn't have too many people, and the road that Alex lives on in particular does not have pretty much anyone. The further you go down her road in the neighborhood, the less and less people there are, and eventually it just turns into wooden wilderness area where nobody goes. The only reason why somebody would go there is to hike and sightsee from the top of the mountain. Alex and Janie think that it would be a good idea to go camping one night, and they bring the whole shebang. They bring tents, flashlights, etc., and they go and camp for the night. Mind you, middle summer, Alaska, the sun does not go down early there. I'm talking like 11 p.m. is when the sun starts to go down. They set up camp and they're kind of hanging out. Janie and Alex decide to go to bed. Both fall asleep, and when Alex wakes up in the middle of the night, Janie is gone. Like out of a movie, tent flap is open and Janie's gone. So Alex, being the good friend that she is, gets up and starts looking around for Janie, knowing that she's somewhere up on this mountain. At this point in time, they're far enough away from the neighborhood where nobody can see them, but they're not quite to the top of the mountain. So they're pretty isolated out where they were. At first, Alex just thought that her friend had gotten up and like gone to the bathroom or was getting water or something. But after a couple of seconds of searching for her, she realized that there are tracks leading up the trail towards the top of the mountain. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. There was nothing at the top of this mountain. As Alex is hiking up this mountain to go get her friend, she can hear 2 feet behind her. This was not like 1 foot in front of the other kind of situation. It felt like 2 feet landing and jumping behind her. As she approached the top of the mountain, she sees her friend staring off into the distance at what she thought was literally nothing, calls out to her, no answer. Janie is absolutely fixated on something that is in front of her. As Alex gets closer, she realizes that there is this thing standing in front of her. She just describes it as a very tall, pale, flesh-like creature. Calls out again to Janie, and this time is like yelling at her. Janie snaps out of it, and as she does, this thing that they were looking at crawls down the mountain on all fours, disappears into the wilderness. The moment Janie snaps out of it, she kind of stumbles down and is like, what am I doing? Why am I up here? What even happened? After that interaction, they both agreed that they were just going to hike back to their campsite, pack everything up, and sleep at the house. And that's exactly what they did. And they have not returned to the trail since, or the campsite since. They have no idea what they encountered that night, nor do they want to find out again. And Alex actually mentions at the end of her email that this could have very well been her imagination or just another person that thought it would be funny to like play a prank on them. Let me know what you think in the comments. That's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
My house burned down and we never really figured out who or what started it. Spooky story time. This story was submitted by a follower named Kayla, and she says that she knows that this sounds a little far-fetched, but as far as she can remember, her house has always been haunted. So one of her many scary encounters, she says that she was sitting on the couch watching TV like normal, and as she's sitting there watching TV, she literally feels a hand on her back, like telling her like, hey. Obviously, she turns around and there's nothing there. She says that she would be on her computer in the living room working on homework, and she would hear loud bangs in the kitchen. So she would go, she would check, and the cabinets were literally opening and closing shut, loud, like poltergeist type shit. And if you know, you know, but a lot of the times when us as kids see things our parents never believe us, what's crazy is that not only did Kayla's mom believe her, she also witnessed a lot of it. So Kayla's mom was a collector. She collected a lot of like antique style dolls, and she says that she was constantly like cleaning around their area in her bedroom, and as soon as she would pass by them to like get out of the restroom, she could hear talking, whispering, talking. She turned around and it was coming directly from where the dolls were. Now clearly dolls don't talk, so she would check the closet, under the bed, nothing. Now, Kayla was also always hearing her name being called. She said that it never sounded scary, malicious, like it was going to harm her, but when she would look in the direction that her name was being called from, she could see a shadow, like scurry against the wall. Now, Kayla did say that towards the end, the house started to feel dark, heavy, malicious. And one night in their sleep, their house unfortunately caught fire. Now, obviously, there was an investigation. They tried to see what happened, what started it, and the investigation went nowhere. No one ever really found out how this fire started. She says that the house wasn't new, but it wasn't old. It was in fairly good shape. Nothing was left on, and they never figured it out. Now, her question is, do you think that all of this is somehow pieced together? The ghosts, the spirits, the paranormal activity, the fire, just all of it. Is it all a coincidence? Was this a freak accident? Or do you guys think that, again, this was somehow related? Thank you so much to Kayla for sending me this spooky story. As always, if you guys have a story that you'd like me to read, please send it via DM or email because I'd love to read it. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
Beware, you might just invite something in. Welcome back to the series where I tell true horror experiences submitted by you, the viewers. Today's viewer has requested to remain anonymous, but a big thank you for submitting your experience to the channel. Honestly, after reading this submission, it made me realize how much we don't know about the supernatural. But perhaps it's better it stays that way. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. Today's experience takes place in Oceania, Papua New Guinea. I was in the 7th grade, and my little brother was in elementary school. I honestly didn't really believe in the supernatural or anything really involving it. Oh, how that changed. Well, one day when my little brother was walking home from school with his guardian, something unusual happened. They crossed paths with this old white-haired man who many people around the school referred to as an evil sorcerer. His eyes immediately locked with theirs, and he was chewing something, betel nut, which in itself wasn't unusual. In fact, it was very common. My brother's guardian froze, wondering why the old man was so fixated on them. Until suddenly he spat his betel nut directly towards my little brother. But in a moment of pure instinct, his guardian stepped in front, blocking him and subsequently being covered in the old man's gob. Before they could even comprehend what had happened, the man had ran off, and they both headed back home, rightfully confused. But unfortunately, that was just the start of it. Not long after, my brother's guardian started to feel off. A painful sensation in her stomach, similar to that of a needle piercing through her. She couldn't quite shake the feeling that perhaps the old man was responsible. Maybe he had placed a curse on her. Well, after that, she was never quite the same. At night, I could hear her groaning intensely. Other times, I'd catch her sobbing, clutching her waist from that intense needle-like pain. Some time had passed, and no matter what we did, things weren't getting any better. So we decided to call someone, a witch doctor. And when they arrived, they started performing all kind of things on my brother's guardian. But most intriguingly, they placed something in a nearby tree, a stone of which we called a watch, that he claimed to contain a guardian spirit. Thankfully, she did start to get better. But there is one thing I forgot to mention about the watch: the massive risk it can carry. There are many reasons it could be corrupted, or maybe the spirit that was binded to the stone with the intention of protection doesn't have that intention itself. I started to notice things like heavy footsteps above when there was seemingly no one there, things going missing, but the most uncomfortable of instances was that intense feeling of being watched by something you knew was there but couldn't quite see. But then, worst of all, her sickness came back. But this time it was much, much worse. She would cry, shout, shake violently at exactly 3 a.m. in the morning. I could hear it. But there was one particular night that remains in my memory forever. The power was out, and it was close to 3 a.m. when I was awoken by the sound of crying. No. Laughter coming from the guardian's room. My hairs instinctively stood on end as I heard the sound of something walking up to my room. The sound of light footsteps creaking up. My room didn't have a door, so when I say I could clearly see the silhouette of a dark figure staring into my room. I froze, knowing I was completely powerless, so hid my head under the covers and prayed that whatever it was would eventually go away. That very morning, my father called in a pastor who conducted a thorough cleansing of the property. 3 days later, he found 3 marks on his spine, resembling that of claws, but the pastor insisted that the property was now cleansed. My opinion? Well, I don't really believe him. Whatever it was, I don't think it's left. I can feel it. But I'm really, really hoping that I'm wrong.
If you don't like scary stories, the paranormal, or you just want to get a good rest tonight, go ahead and scroll because I have another scary story submission that was sent to me via email and we're going to read it right now. The email reads, "Hi Casey, after watching your stories about Whitefish Point and Manistee, I knew I had to send you this, especially after hearing other people describe how strange the Great Lakes can feel right before something happens. My family has a cottage near Arcadia, Michigan. I need to stay anonymous because we still own it and I don't want people figuring out exactly where it is. A few years ago, I stayed there alone in October. A storm had came through earlier that day, but by evening, the lake was completely calm, like weirdly calm. There weren't even small waves hitting the beach. I went outside before dark and I saw a woman standing in Lake Michigan. She was far enough out that the water should have been over her head, but it only reached her waist. Looked like she was wearing a dark dress. At first, I honestly thought that she was trying to hurt herself, so I started yelling and walking toward the water. She didn't react to that. Then she raised one arm and pointed behind me toward the cottage. I turned around because I thought she was warning me about something. Nobody was there. When I went to look back at her, she was gone. I told myself she had to have just gone underwater, so I waited for her to come back up. I stood there for probably 10 minutes searching the surface. Nothing. I didn't know what to make of it, and eventually I just went back to the cottage. That night, I woke up to the weirdest sound. It sounded like water was moving through the walls of the cottage. Like not dripping, not like there was a leak. It sounded like actual waves rolling through the hallways and hitting my walls. I felt like I was going insane. Was I dreaming? I ran to my door, I opened it up, I looked down, the floor was completely dry. And of course, when I opened the door, the sound stopped. I looked around a bit, and then I decided to turn and look down the hallway. And I shit you not, the woman from the lake was standing at the end of the hallway. What's so strange is up close, she didn't look transparent or like some obvious ghost like I would have always expected. She looked like a normal woman who was freezing to death. But what's odd is I just knew she wasn't in a physical form of a human. Her hair and her dark dress were soaking wet, but also no water was dripping from either of them. She walked toward me and quietly asked, "Which way is the shore?" I pointed toward the back of the cottage. She looked in that direction and said, "No, that's where I came in." Then she walked past me and entered the bedroom I had been sleeping in. What the fuck? Y'all, I'm like shitting my pants. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna continue to read this, but this stand is so sturdy. My phone has never fallen. Literally ever. It's almost like somebody would have had to like yank it down for that to happen. It's giving me the spooks. I don't even know if I want to finish reading this, but I feel like I can't leave you guys hanging. I couldn't make myself follow her. I couldn't even make myself say a sound. I stood in my hallway until I heard my mattress creak. Then there it was, the sound again. It sounded like water sloshing against the bedroom walls. Finally, I was able to move and I no longer felt stuck. I ran outside and I slept in my car. The next morning, everything inside was dry. I called my aunt and I started explaining what happened. Before I described the woman, my aunt interrupted me and asked, did she want to know where the shore was? Apparently, my aunt saw the same woman when she was 17. She said the woman walked out of the lake after a storm, entered the cottage, and asked the exact same question. My aunt said when she pointed toward Lake Michigan, the woman became terrified. She grabbed my aunt's arm and said, "That isn't the lake. The lake is underneath the house." Has anyone near Arcadia ever seen a woman standing impossibly far out in the lake after a storm? And has anyone else ever heard water underneath their home when the ground was completely dry? First of all, thank you so much for sending in your story. I'm a little spooked. Because that was so weird. And my energy is just off right now. I literally have freaking goosebumps. So normally I say more, I yap a little bit more on these, but that freaked me out. I don't know. What do you guys think in the comments? If you want to send in your scary story, send it to the email above for a chance for me to read it on my page. I'm literally like bamboozled right now. My normal spiel, I'm sorry. Yeah, if you're new here and you want to see more scary stories or hear more scary stories, go ahead and give me a follow. This was weird. This story was weird because of this happening.
One of my followers, her name is Day, sent these stories in, and I'm going to tell them all in one because I do believe they are connected. Now, she refers to them as glitch/time jump stories, but I don't know. I also have a suspicion of something else, and I want to know what you guys think, so stick around and listen up. For some background, she says that she lives in the Pacific Northwest in Canada. She grew up in the 80s in the countryside, just outside a small growing city with two sisters and hippie parents. Day says she was raised to be open-minded, but also skeptical. So even when strange things are happening, she's always looking to explain it first with science, of course. She also says this to say, I am not easily befuddled. And while I do believe in the magical universe, I also believe that a lot of normal, everyday, science-y things are pretty astounding. It's not always woo-woo just because it's unusual, which I love that. Okay, so anyway, the first story, this is the older story. It's kind of two stories in and of itself, but she didn't connect them at the time. So y'all pay close attention and just let us know at the end. She said in retrospect, these things were happening during the same year of her life. And while she doesn't understand either, it could definitely be connected. When she was 18, almost 30 years ago, she was living with her best friend in a 2-bedroom townhouse for about a year. During that time, she was seeing flashes of light out of the corner of her eye. She said it was so minor and mundane that at first, the first couple of times, she just assumed that it was her imagination, but it kept happening. She said sometimes it was close, kind of like lighting up the trees around her. And sometimes it was far, as in silhouetting a mountain, which is intense. It happened in the day and in the night and always out of the corner of her vision. And it was in such a split second that at times she would even question if she saw anything at all. Now, it wasn't until it happened repeatedly, maybe once or twice a month for half the year, that she started to be like, okay, what is actually going on here? She even wondered, is there something wrong with her vision? She said, I don't know an exact time frame, but I think it was over the course of about 6 months to a year. Okay, so then at one point, she saw an actual source of the light. She was sitting up in bed reading, and as she looked across the room, she saw the flash. Now, it originated from a pinpoint in the center of the room, about 3 feet from the floor. And then it expanded to fill the room and contracted in a split second back into that pinpoint where it came from. And then that was it. That was the last time she ever saw it. And it never happened again. And she has no explanation. Okay, so now the time jump thing. She said this also happened during that same year, but she said because at the time she didn't connect it to the light thing, she doesn't know how close or how far it was from that. All she knows is that these both happened in the same bedroom, and she only had lived there for a year. So it had to be close, right? So there's a good possibility that it was close together. She said it was a classic townhouse layout, with the stairs going up from the front door straight up to the bedroom at the top. There was a hall with a bathroom and then a second bedroom at the front of the house. That one was hers. So one night she was heading to bed and she walked down the hall past the bathroom and into her room. So she glanced at the clock on the bedside table opposite the door. And then all of a sudden, she was in the bathroom. She was in the bathroom with both of her hands flat on the counter, leaning forward until her nose almost touched the mirror. She said her eyes stretched wide open, staring at herself in the mirror. It was so abrupt that she startled herself and jumped back and realized she was now in her underwear. Confused, she returns to her room, and on entering the door and glanced at the clock again, 10 minutes had passed since she'd walked in before, seemingly a second ago. And then she said, that's it. Again, nothing further happened. I never had any other weirdness. No explanation for the 10 minutes that she lost, wherein she apparently got undressed and went to stare at herself in the bathroom mirror. I don't know, you guys. I'm getting abduction vibes. Also, the flashes of light. That's where I'm going with this. She also says she wasn't drinking or under the influence of anything. She says she's not a partier. She was working full time, taking care of herself, and was a responsible teen with a normal life. She says, I've never had an alien encounter or any weird dreams. I don't have any mental health problems, and I'm a healthy, normal person in pretty much every way. So yeah, she would love to know what y'all think of that one. Hey, just because you don't remember the abduction or an abduction or experience with aliens doesn't mean it didn't happen. Okay, so now the newer story is a time glitch too, she says. She still lives in the same area where she grew up. It's a large, long island with a highway running the length of it. And at the time of the story, about a year and a half ago, she was living in the town she grew up in. And her daughter, who was 18 at the time, and her fiance were living in a smaller town about 40 minutes north. It was December, dark and rainy and cold, but not freezing. She said herself, her son, who was 17, and her partner had all gone up to have dinner at her daughter's. Now, she lives about 5 minutes off the highway, and so does Day. The drive up the highway is usually about 30 minutes, so if the weather is good, the full trip one way takes about 40 minutes. So after dinner, when they left to head home, she said she looked at the clock when she got in the car. She was the one driving. She goes, we drove all the way up to the highway. I glanced at the clock. 5 minutes had passed, totally normal. We got on the highway and headed south. She said there are several exits between the two towns, and especially in the dark when everything looks the same, I had to keep a really close eye on them so that you don't zone out and miss them. So they headed out south on the highway, and she did zone out for just a few minutes, but when she saw a sign for an exit coming up, she glanced over to see which one it was, and to her very much surprise, it was the turnoff that they needed to take. Now, she looks at the clock. It had only been 10 minutes since they got on the highway. They had just done a 30-minute drive in 10 minutes. And she says, I hadn't seen any of the exits in between. So she immediately commented to the other two in the car, and they were equally as confused. Her son was watching his show on YouTube and usually gets through an entire episode on the drive, but he was only halfway through. Unfortunately, her partner was reading his Kindle and he wasn't really paying attention to the time. She said, I'm upset with myself for not thinking of checking Life 360 when she got home, just to see what it would show, because she did have it active, but it totally didn't occur to her. She said she's driven that route so many times. In fact, she's driven that route so many times, she can't figure it out. She said she was not speeding. Plus, it was a rainy night. She was not going above the speed limit, and there is no way she could have sped through 3 times faster than normal. She said it weirds her out every time she drives that route now. She is constantly timing herself to reassure herself that she did not have it wrong. She says, I have no idea what happened, but my sense of time and the clock and my son's video all agreed that only 15 minutes passed since she left her daughter's, and it should have been 35 minutes. All right, y'all, you know what to do. I'm sure Day will be checking the comments, so drop your thoughts below. If you have your own creepy story, please submit it. And if you're new here, definitely follow for more creepy story time.
This photo was taken during my sister-in-law's duty as a nurse at a local hospital in Malaysia. She mentioned that before this photo was taken, her coworker asked to take a photo of a room to show something regarding their work, but unexpectedly discovered this. After this photo was taken, the entire hospital had a blackout. This video was captured in 2024 and shows an unknown shadow figure running on one of the top floors of my school. At the time, that floor wasn't being utilized. Our school was built in 2004, and before it was our school, it was an old market in town. This photo was taken in January of this year at around 2 in the morning. I was on my way to drop my sister off at the airport, but we arrived nearly 4 hours early. Feeling tired, I stepped out for a moment and was captivated by the quiet streets and the glow of the street lights. So I decided to take a photo. When I looked back at the picture, I noticed a dark figure crossing the street. The thing is, though, there were no people around at that time. There are local rumors that a man once passed away in a hit-and-run accident on that very road. Some believe his spirit still wanders the area.
Her grandmother passed away, and one of my viewers inherited her handwritten cookbook. But when she started making one of the recipes, she discovered something hidden between the ingredients, and there were these little warnings. And one of them said, if you hear Grandma's voice from the hallway, do not answer her. Now, I'm going to call this woman, for the sake of the story, Bianca. And obviously, I can't verify any of this, but Bianca told me that, you know, her grandmother had one rule growing up that everyone in the family thought was absolutely ridiculous. And every Sunday evening, Grandma cooked. It didn't matter if she was sick. It didn't matter if family was coming over or not. And strangely, she insisted on preparing certain recipes exactly as they were written in the cookbook. No deviating from it, right? After Grandma had passed away, Bianca inherited her old cookbook. And while flipping through the pages, she realized Grandma had written strange little sentences between the ingredients. And at first, Bianca thought, you know, they were cooking notes. And then she found one that said, never let it smell the blood. And another one said, keep the curtains closed after onions go in. But the strangest warning appeared beside Grandma's Sunday stew. And it said, if you begin this recipe, you must finish it by 11 p.m. Now, Bianca made it anyway, and around 11:40 that night, someone started walking around the outside of her kitchen. And Bianca said Grandma's cookbook wasn't really a cookbook, at least not originally. It was an old 3-ring binder that had probably been sitting in her grandmother's kitchen since like sometime in like the late 1960s or something. And the cover had once been white and now it was faded, you know, one of those really, really old and dirty ones. And by the time Bianca inherited it, it turned that strange yellowish color of old plastic, and you know that it gets after like decades. And inside were hundreds of recipes. Some were newspaper clippings, some came from magazines, but most were handwritten by Grandma, and she preserved it pretty well for how old it was. And Grandma was an incredible cook. Bianca said some of her happiest childhood memories involved sitting in that kitchen with her grandmother cooking. But Grandma had very peculiar habits. She never cooked with the kitchen curtains open after sunset. She always kept a small bowl of salt besides the stove. And every Sunday evening, she made the same stew. You know, nobody particularly loved it. Nobody hated it. It was just something that Grandma did. It was nothing really in particular. But Bianca once asked why, and Grandma would smile and say, some traditions aren't for us. Bianca assumed she meant family tradition. Years later, she realized she probably didn't. Now, Grandma passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 87. After the funeral, the family divided up her belongings, and Bianca didn't want any jewelry, she didn't want any furniture, she wanted that cookbook. And a few weeks later, Bianca finally got it and she opened it. And she spent almost an hour and a half reading the recipes that she'd forgotten even existed. Grandma's biscuits, apple pie, pot roast, peach cobbler. And then Bianca noticed something a little off. Grandma wrote notes everywhere, and they were normal at first, like her cousin Jeremy likes extra cinnamon. Use less sugar next time, but mixed among those were sentences that didn't make any sense at all. And on a recipe for cornbread, it said never make this after sundown if the black door in the backyard is open. And beside a steak recipe, wash the knife immediately, don't leave blood in the sink. And on a soup recipe, it said if 3 knocks come from the pantry, add another handful of salt. Bianca actually laughed at it, and Grandma had always had a strange sense of humor. Well, then she found the Sunday stew, and the page was badly stained. Clearly, Grandma had used it hundreds of times over the years. And across the top, she'd written, Sunday stew, and the ingredients were ordinary. But between the ingredients, Grandma had written warnings, almost like the warnings were part of the recipe, if that makes sense. And close, every curtain before cutting them. And, once this goes in, do not leave the back door open, the black back door open. Leave a pinch of salt by the windowsill. And at the bottom of the page was one final instruction. Grandma had underlined it 3 times, and it said, begin before sunset, finish before 11 p.m., never stop halfway. And Bianca called her mother asking for some clarity, and she told her that apparently Grandma had always been a little on the superstitious side. But then Bianca mentioned the Sunday stew, and her mother became really quiet. In the words of Michael Scott, she's a little stitious. Now, she told Bianca that she'd completely forgotten about that, and when Bianca's mother was a little girl, Grandma once missed making the stew one day, just once. And Grandma had been hospitalized unexpectedly, and her husband, Bianca's grandfather, was home alone. And that night, he called Grandma at the hospital around 2 in the morning, and he was absolutely terrified. He claimed someone had been walking around the house for hours just circling it, and every few minutes he would see somebody pass one of the windows. Grandma apparently became hysterical, and she told him to lock himself in the back bedroom and not respond if anybody calls his name. Now, Bianca asked what really happened, and her mother said, that he never really talked about it openly, ever. So she couldn't even really say anything. And a few weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon, Bianca decided to make Grandma's stew. Not because she believed the warnings, but she missed her grandmother, right? She wanted the smell of Grandma's kitchen again. So around 5 p.m., she started cooking. And almost jokingly, Bianca followed every strange little instruction that was left. She closed the curtain. She put salt on the windowsills, used exactly, 4 cloves of garlic and everything. And by 7 p.m., the house smelled exactly the way she remembered it from her childhood. And Bianca started crying for a few minutes. She said it genuinely felt like her grandmother was there again. And then something knocked on the back door 3 times. And Bianca said she froze and nearly crapped herself. And her dog lifted its head and she walked toward the back door. And then she remembered the cookbook. Once the rosemary goes in, do not open the black back door. And Bianca laughed nervously. Was it a coincidence? Probably a neighbor. She looked through the peephole and there was nobody there. Oh, shit. So she returned to the stove, and 10 minutes later, 3 more knocks came. This time, her dog stood up, but instead of barking, it backed away from the kitchen and into the living room. Bianca started feeling very uncomfortable and very uneasy at this point. She checked her phone. There were no messages, no missed calls. She walked into the living room and peeked through a tiny opening in the curtains, and again, there was nobody outside. Then she heard these footsteps slowly crossing the porch, and they stopped outside of the living room window. And Bianca could see the curtains moving slightly from the air vent, and beyond it was complete darkness, though. And then there was this tapping noise, and something was touching the glass. And Bianca stepped backward, and there was another tap, then another, and moving along the outside of the house were these taps. along the windows, and whatever was outside was circling the house. Bianca grabbed the cookbook, she started searching through Grandma's notes, and that's when she noticed something that she'd missed. At the bottom of the stew recipe, Grandma had written something on the opposite side of the page, and the ink had bled through, and Bianca was flipping through it, and there was another warning, and it was pretty plain and simple. And on the back of the recipe, Bianca found this message, and it was pretty much saying, it will imitate somebody you love. The first voice will be unfamiliar, the second voice will be mine, and the third voice will be yours. And almost immediately a strange man's voice started to call from her from the outside, and she realized it was her father's voice. The only problem, her dad was well and alive, and he was at home, not with her. And Bianca had called him, and he's like, look, I'm home, I'm telling you I'm not there. So she started freaking out. So she continued on with the recipe. She did exactly as she was told. She didn't answer. She did all the weird little notes in the recipe, and she was finished by 10:59. Boom, pot off the stove, on the kitchen table, and she was eating, and all was well at that point. She remembered the warning, she remembered what to do, and she followed it to a T, exactly how she was supposed to. But to this day, she can't explain what was really said, what was actually happening, because as soon as she finished and the cookbook was closed and she was sitting down to eat, everything stopped. There was no more footsteps, there was no more tapping, there was no more calling out of a weird voice. There was nothing. Everything stopped immediately. So, I don't know. This happened in the Appalachian Mountain area. For those who want to know where this took place, yeah, up on, I believe, in the South Carolina area, border of North Carolina and South Carolina is where she said. So, yeah. Again, let me know what you guys know, what you know about this, or if you've ever experienced it in the comments. Those of you that are from there, I can't verify any of this again, so take it as entertainment, and you guys can decide.
Join me after dark as we climb Parbold Hill to the graveyard of Christ Church for a ghost story. A curious old ghost story took place in this very church only 3 years ago. A local woman to Parbold was walking her pet dog through the graveyard with her friend. They were suddenly rather startled to see an older gentleman seemingly appear out of nowhere, get right in their way, and they moved, excused themselves, and even proceeded to open the little gate for him. The two looked at each other and began to laugh about how the man had not even acknowledged them. How rude, one whispered to the other, and with that, he was just simply gone. Now things get a little creepier when the two realised this man had been long dead. Fast forward to autumn that year, around the Halloween season. Again, she's walking her pet dog through the graveyard, this time through the crunchy autumnal leaves. A truly beautiful spot, a church on top of the hill. This time, she sees the man again, but he's missing a full jaw. That's right. A loose tongue hangs out as he gargles to try and make a noise. The woman panics, thinking he's gravely injured. He's got marks all over his body. He appears rotten. And just like that, he's gone again. He's vanished, this time before her very eyes. She can't help but seek advice from the parish vicar after this terrifying sighting. Turns out this ghost has been seen for centuries. It's a leprosy victim from the local community that desperately tried to make his way to the church whilst dying, his jaw having fell off at home, held up previously by bandages. The ghost frightens people so much, as it has since the 1700s, that some people will not walk in here after dark.
I can still hear the voice whispering from the dollhouse that my parents bought from a garage sale when I was 8. This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about the one thing from my childhood that I wish we never brought home. We found the dollhouse at a neighborhood garage sale, and it was huge. Not one of those plastic ones. It was handmade out of wood, probably 3 feet tall, with real wallpaper inside and tiny doors that actually opened and closed. I wanted it immediately. My mom asked the woman how much she wanted for it, and she said $20. My dad laughed because apparently whoever had made it put a ridiculous amount of work into it. The woman just said it had been sitting in their basement for years and she wanted the space back. Nothing creepy, no warning, and no story about where it came from. My parents loaded it into the back of our SUV, and by that afternoon, it was sitting against the wall across from my bed. I loved it. For maybe 4 days. The first strange thing happened when I woke up and noticed the furniture inside had been moved. I had set up the little bedroom upstairs exactly how I wanted it. Bed against the wall and a tiny dresser beside it, the little wooden rocking chair near the window, and that morning the chair was downstairs. The bed had been turned around, and every miniature door inside the house was open. I blamed my younger brother. He swore he hadn't touched it. My mom told me I probably rearranged it and forgot. So I fixed everything again, and the next morning the doors were open again. After that, I started closing them every night before I went to sleep. Not because I was scared yet. It became this little weird test. Close every door, get into bed, and check them in the morning. And almost every time, at least one would be open. And then I started hearing the whispering. The first time it was so quiet I thought my mom had called me from the hallway. I woke up and heard, "Hey." I waited and nothing. And then, "Come here." It sounded like a woman, not a kid, and it was coming from across my bedroom. I looked towards the dollhouse and the room was dark, but there was enough light from outside that I could see the shape of it against the wall. I pulled the blanket over my head, and eventually I fell back asleep. The next morning there was a little wooden person standing inside the upstairs bedroom. I had never seen it before. It was about 2 inches tall, a woman in a long dress, and no painted face, just smooth wood where the face should have been. I took it downstairs and asked my mom where it had come from, and she had no idea. She figured it had been stuck somewhere inside the dollhouse when we bought it. I didn't want it anymore, so I put it in the junk drawer in the kitchen. That night, I woke up again. "Hey." I stayed completely still, and then, "Where did you put me?" I started crying. My dad came into the room and turned the light on. I told him there was somebody talking from the dollhouse. Obviously, he checked it and there was nothing inside. And then I looked at the upstairs bedroom and the little wooden woman was back, standing beside the tiny bed. My dad said my brother must have moved it, and I know he hadn't. And after that, things stopped happening only in my room. My dad started walking upstairs in the middle of the night, and he'd fall asleep in bed with my mom, and then wake up standing in the kitchen or sitting on the couch with no memory of getting there. Our dog stopped coming into my bedroom. He used to sleep beside me almost every night, and now he'd get to my doorway and stare at the dollhouse and back away. My mom started hearing footsteps upstairs when my brother and I were both downstairs with her, and almost every night, I heard that woman. Sometimes it was just whispering I couldn't understand, and sometimes she said my name. One night she said, "You're too far away." That was the first time I actually got out of bed. I don't know why. I remember being terrified, but at the same time I felt like I needed to see something. I walked across my room and knelt in front of the dollhouse. The little wooden woman was standing in the upstairs bedroom, facing the back wall. I reached in to turn her around, and that's when I noticed a tiny door behind her. I had played with that dollhouse every day. I knew every room in it. I had never seen that door. It was built into the wall and was barely bigger than my thumb. I opened it. There should have been solid wood behind it. Instead, it looked completely black. I leaned closer, and from somewhere inside the little opening, a woman whispered, "There you are." I screamed so loudly my parents came running. My dad carried the dollhouse into the garage that night. I remember feeling relieved when it was gone. And then around 2 a.m, something scratched inside my bedroom wall. It was moving from one side of the room to the other, slowly, and then stopped right beside my bed. My mom heard it too, and that was the first time she stopped telling me I was imagining things. The next morning, my dad decided the dollhouse was leaving. He loaded it into his truck and took it to the dump. I asked him years later if he really threw it away, and he swears he did. After that, the house went quiet. My dad stopped waking up downstairs, and the footsteps stopped. Our dog came back into my bedroom, and I stopped hearing the woman. Eventually, I stopped thinking about the dollhouse altogether, until I was 23. By then, I lived in a completely different state. I was asleep in my apartment when something woke me up. I opened my eyes, and from somewhere near the foot of my bed, I heard, "Hey." I knew the voice immediately. I hadn't heard it in 15 years. I turned on the lamp and nothing was there. I didn't sleep again that night, and I wish I could say it only happened once. It doesn't happen often. Sometimes years go by. It's happened in apartments. It happened once when I was staying with my boyfriend. It even happened in a hotel room when I was traveling for work. But always at night, and always when I'm almost asleep. And always that same woman. For years, she still said things I remembered from childhood. My name, come here, hey. But last year it changed. I woke up sometime after 3. My husband was asleep beside me, and I heard her whisper directly next to my ear, I found you. I turned on the light so fast I woke him up. There was nobody there. I hadn't heard her since, and somehow that scares me more, because when I was little, I thought the woman belonged to the dollhouse. Now I'm pretty sure the dollhouse was just how she found me. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
There was this man named Mohammed from Pakistan. Now, in the 80s, he moves to America. He goes to college and he became a geologist. And he ended up getting assigned to do a job on the Navajo reservation. Well, during his time there, he befriended this older Native American man. And this guy eventually invites him to come stay at his house. We said one night he was on the phone with his family from Pakistan, and he was speaking to them in Aramaic. And he said after he got done with the phone call, he went out of the room, and this Native American man began to speak to him in Aramaic. And he says, wait a minute, how do you know my language? Like, how do you understand what I'm saying? And this Native American man says to him, well, you're never going to believe me, but one day I was out in the desert when I seen a light shining over the mountain. He said, I walked in that direction, and he said, I seen what appeared to be 3 beams of light. He said they kind of looked like the shape of you and me, but they were something else. They were from the stars. And he said they began to talk to me in a language that I didn't understand. And he said all of a sudden, they began to make sense. It sounded like they were speaking my language. And I realized that I was speaking another language. I was speaking the same language as them. And he said they told me that if I would come back here continuously, that they would show me things and that they would help me. And he said, so ever since, I've just been able to speak it. And I haven't heard it since you came here and visited. So Muhammad says to him, you have to show me this place. Like, take me there. So the Native American man eventually agrees. And so he takes him out into the desert. It's just complete darkness. There's nothing out there. And he said, all of a sudden, this beam of light came flying down from the sky. And he said it turned into 3 beams of light that was in the shape of a human. And he said they began to speak to him, except they were very angry. They said, why did you bring him here? Like, you were not supposed to do that. You have broken the rules. Like, you are in trouble. Like, you shouldn't have done that. So they said, you have to leave this place. Don't come back. Like, leave now. So Muhammad and this man, they go back to his house. And that night, Muhammad just doesn't know what to believe, like what he had seen. And so he's tossing and turning in bed. And finally he turns on his side. And when he looks over in the corner of the room in a chair, there is this man sitting there. And at the time, he thinks that it is the Native American man. And so he says, what do you want? Like, it's late. So all of a sudden, this man reached over and he grabbed Muhammad's arm. And he began to squeeze really tight. And he said, so Muhammad tried to pull his arm away. And this man came close and tried to bite his arm. And so he began fighting with this thing, whatever it was, and he realized it wasn't the Native American man. This thing had very long fingers. It had these white, shimmering eyes. And this thing had a hold of his arm and would not let go. So he said like this prayer, and he said it over and over again. And eventually it let him go. And he ran out of the room. And he said he then talked to the Native American man, who told him, like, just leave now. Like, don't ever come back. They're angry at us. Like, just leave. So he said he got in his car and he never went back. And he always felt like what he had encountered was something that he had talked about in Pakistan, which was a jinn. And he always wondered if these aliens or UFOs that people see were simply jinn.
What would happen if you followed a mimic? Now, I've always wondered this, because you hear these stories of someone hearing like their mother knocking at the door or telling them to come in the kitchen. But what would happen if you actually listened to the mimic? Here's a story that might tell you why you should not follow a mimic. There was this young man named Aiden. Now, Aiden lived with his grandfather and his two parents. Now, one day, Aiden was hanging out in his bedroom, and he's playing a game. Well, he hears his parents like pull in, and he looks out the window and sees them getting out of the car, unloading some groceries into the house. So he's like, awesome, man, we're gonna have something to eat. So he goes back to his game, and then he hears his mother say, Aiden, come in the kitchen, I got some food. And he, at this time was like in the middle of a battle. So he's like, hold on, Mom, I'll be there shortly, I'm in the middle of a battle. And she goes, come on, Aiden, hurry up, come in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, he said he got a phone call, and it was from his mom. And he's like, why is she calling me when she's in the kitchen? So he picks it up, and his mom's like, hey, honey, we're at the grocery store. Do you want us to get you anything? And he goes, what do you mean you're at the grocery store? You already got groceries. You're in the kitchen. She goes, what are you talking about? We just got to the grocery store. And he looks out the window and sees that their car is not there. And then right at this moment, he hears his mom saying, you better get in the kitchen right now or you're going to be in trouble. You better come eat. And like, he's like, I got to call you back, Mom. He hangs up. So he goes and he locks his door, and then he calls his mom right back and is like, look, when you get home, call me. I'll help you bring in the groceries. So about 25, 30 minutes later, his mom calls him, and she's like, honey, we're home. Come outside. And he said he was getting ready to go out of his room, but he looked out his window first, and their car wasn't there. So he's like, you know what? I don't know what to do, because I don't know like who really is my mom right now. So as he's sitting in his bedroom, right, he hears his parents come home and come into the house, and all of a sudden his mom comes up to his door and starts knocking. And she goes, Aiden, let me in. And he's like, not right now, Mom. And she goes, what are you talking about? Let me in. Unlock this door. Why do you have the door locked? And he's like, no, I'm not opening the door. And his mom goes, all right, I'll just get the key and unlock it. So he grabs like this baseball bat that's chilling in his room, and he's prepared for this thing to come in. And like at the time, he still thinks whatever, was calling his name in the kitchen, this is them. So he sees the handle jiggle and the door open, and it's really his mom. And he can tell that it is actually his real mom. And she goes, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, nothing. And he sets the bat down, and she's like, you're acting weird and stuff. And there's food in the fridge if you're hungry. So he didn't know what to make of that. Like, what did he just experience? And he didn't feel like he could tell his parents about it. So he decided to talk to his grandpa, who was kind of like his best friend at the time. So he goes to his grandpa's room, and he's like, Grandpa, he's like, have you ever seen something like you can't explain? And he goes, what do you mean? And he tells the story about like how he thought his mom and dad had came home, he's seen their car and everything, but it wasn't actually them. And the grandpa goes, oh no. And he goes, what's wrong, Grandpa? And he says, well, when I was a young boy, I grew up in a small Polish village near Warsaw. And he said, we had this term that was this long Polish word, but it roughly translated into evil twin. And he said they believed there were these evil spirits that could take the form of anyone and would try and trick you and lure you, out into the woods. So his grandpa said, when I was a young boy, my father had me chopping wood outside. And I hear my grandma's voice coming from the forest. And she's saying, come in the woods. I baked you a pie. Like, come out here. It's nice and warm. Like, you'll like this pie. And he said, he was so hungry, like he almost started to go out into the woods until his father ran and grabbed him and said, get back in the house. And his father locked the door and said, if you hear someone calling you from the woods, don't ever go, don't respond. So he said, when you encounter an evil twin, as they called it, they will follow you for the rest of your life. And he feared that maybe this thing had followed him here to America, and this is what Aiden had seen. A couple weeks later, his parents are gone, and it's just him and his grandpa, and they're watching this World War II documentary in the living room. Well, all of a sudden, the wind picked up, and a strong breeze pushes the back kitchen door open, and they hear it, open up. So his grandpa's like, I'll go and close the door real quick, and I better lock it so it doesn't blow open again. So his grandpa goes into the kitchen, but after about 10-15 minutes, he doesn't come back. So Aiden's like, Grandpa, are you all right? He goes into the kitchen, the back door's still open, and he doesn't see his grandpa. He goes throughout the house, he's yelling his name, he doesn't see him anywhere. So he goes out, to the back door, and he's yelling his grandpa's name, he doesn't hear it. So he calls up his parents, and his parents come home immediately, and they call the police, and they do this big search throughout the neighborhood and into the woods. And they end up finding his grandfather in the middle of the woods. He is completely naked. He is confused and doesn't know who he is, doesn't know anything, doesn't remember anything. So they bring him back home and everything. Well, Aiden said that, they chalked this up to dementia and said he was diagnosed with a severe case of dementia. But Aiden, in his mind, suspected, because of the series of events that happened before this and his grandfather going out to the kitchen when the door opened, that this was the evil twin thing that his grandfather had talked about. And he said, although his grandfather had completely lost his memory, from time to time, he would say to Aiden, is my brother outside? Is my brother out there? And he couldn't figure out why, his grandfather would keep saying that. And then he realized maybe this thing appeared as his brother, and it lured him, into the woods.
One of the things that we often see with these black-eyed children sightings is they are very similar to people who said they've encountered the Men in Black. When you think about it, right, these entities that have solid black eyes, that have pale skin, that are very menacing, that seem to come out of nowhere and almost sort of threaten these people. So you have to wonder, are they somehow connected, or maybe essentially the same thing? There was an interesting story out of South Bend, Indiana. There was this man named Jake. Jake said that when he was younger, there was this house on the end of his street. Said it was run down and it looked very creepy. And all the kids in the neighborhood, they made up stories about this house, that it was haunted, that there was this legend, and there was all these weird things that happened there. We said one night his dad was driving home from work, and he happened to pull in front of that old house. And he sees these kids running around in the front yard. And he thinks, wait a second, they're not supposed to be there. This house is abandoned, no one lives there. So he stops his car, he rolls down the window, and he says, hey, what are you kids doing? You're not supposed to be in this yard. So that's when the kids ran up to his car, and they started trying to reach their hand in the vehicle, and they kept telling him to get out, get out. And his father felt very, very threatened, so he continued on and just drove home. We said later that night there was a knock at the door. And so he goes to the front door, and then his father goes and answers the door. So there were these two men. They were in these black suits. They had a black top hat on, and they just didn't look right. Something was off about them. And he said, they said to his father, what did you see earlier? And they asked him about these kids. He said, you didn't see them, right? And he goes, yeah, I did. I told them to leave because they weren't supposed to be there. And he said, no, listen to us. You did not see them, because if you've seen them, we will come back and you don't want us to come back. And his father said, hold on a second, let me get my wife. So he turns, and then when he turned back again, these two men were gone. And he said he felt like whatever those young kids were, they were somehow connected to these men who came to the house. So what do you think? Are the men in black real? Is anybody else curious about what happened in Las Vegas, April 2023, when that whole family recorded what they described as these 10-foot tall beings in their backyard? And not only that, all of these residents of Las Vegas reported seeing this large fireball in the sky. Something crashed there, something happened that night, and what is it that these people were seeing? Now, what's interesting is they describe these things as being 9 to 10 foot tall, these skinny, sort of inhuman-like beings. And what's interesting is that sounds very similar to what was seen down in Miami, to what has been seen all around the country, in the woods, in the forest, that people describe, these tall, skinny, pale figures that are around 9 to 10 feet tall. So is it possible that this is connected to all of these other events that are happening, not only in this country, but across the world? So what do you think happened in Las Vegas? What do you think is going on?
Want to start streaming today? Tap the Go Live link below to test it now.
This photo was taken by my friend who decided to take the photo because her dog kept looking at this part of the room. She recognizes the apparition as her father because of the shirt it appears to be wearing. The photo was taken at night when there was no light and all the windows had the curtains drawn. This is the strangest thing I've ever had happen to me. I was working by myself in my store when this happened. My sunglasses were over by the office before they dropped from the ceiling to the floor in the middle of the store. I checked the CCTV, but no person or animal came into my store. My neighbor's house is very haunted. One night, I went up to the roof to grab a few things and looked over towards my neighbor's house. Standing on their roof was this figure. I took a photo and practically ran back down into my house.
Let's read a scary Reddit story. I am obsessed with reading people's paranormal encounters on Reddit, and I want to read some of the scariest stories I've come across. Today's story takes place in the backwoods of Oregon. It has one of the scariest Bigfoot encounters that I've ever read about, so get ready. I had been hunting solo for some time and enjoyed the solitude, especially after ETSing out of the Army in 2012. This trip was supposed to be a week-long black-tailed deer hunt. Just me, my rifle, and the endless backcountry of Oregon. I had packed light, camping miles from any trailhead, and was excited to fill my tag. The first day went smoothly. I saw plenty of signs, scouted a few promising ridges, and set up camp near a creek in a deep valley. The terrain was rough, thick underbrush, towering trees, and a silence that felt heavier than usual. But that night, as I sat next to my lantern, I felt it. That awful, gut-twisting feeling of being watched. I scanned the tree line, rifle in hand, but saw nothing. No wind, no rustling, just dead silence. The forest should be alive with noise, but it wasn't. I barely slept. At dawn, I hiked to a ridgeline overlooking a valley. The morning mist clung to the trees, and I glassed the slopes for movement. Nothing. Not a single deer. That's when I heard it. A whistle. Not a bird, not the wind. This was deliberate, human-like, but wrong. It echoed from the tree line behind me. I turned, rifle up, scanning. Nothing. An hour later, I heard it again, and this time it was from below me. I told myself it had to be another hunter, but I never saw a soul out there. And why would someone be whistling? The unease in my gut grew. I'll admit, I was scared as fuck. I woke up to a few huge footprints circling my camp. They didn't quite look like typical Sasquatch print, but they were deep and definitely something heavy. I followed them into the brush, but they disappeared into the undergrowth. I told myself it had to be a bear, even though they didn't look like bear tracks. That day, the forest felt wrong. The birds were gone. Everything seemed eerily silent, besides a little wind here and there throughout the trees and an occasional snap of branches behind me. Then came the smell, a gut-wrenching, rotten stench that made me gag. It smelled like body odor and piss, like a mixture of unwashed sweat and old urine soaked into something living. It came in waves, like something was moving through the trees. That night, I kept my lantern burning low beside me and my pistol in my lap. Sleep was impossible. Something was circling my camp. I'd hear slow, deliberate steps stopping when I moved. Then, just before dawn, a deep, guttural growl rolled through the trees. Not a bear, not a cougar, something bigger. Something that wanted me gone. That night was unbearable. I was shaking and thinking I'm gonna be killed by whatever is out there. At first light, I packed up camp. I wasn't waiting to see what was out there. I had 5 days left on my trip, but I was done. As I hiked back, the forest felt alive, but not in a good way. It felt like it was watching me. Then, about 5 miles from my truck, I saw it. A shape. Just beyond the trees. It was tall. It was too tall. Broad and covered in dark hair, blacker than the shadows around it. It swayed slightly, watching me. I raised my rifle and it stepped back into the trees. Then, to my left, another crack of a branch. I ran. I'm not ashamed to say I ran like hell. My backpack slammed against my back, my boots tore through the underbrush. I could hear them moving, pacing me, just out of sight. Then the whistle started again, one ahead, one behind, communicating and hunting. I turned and fired my rifle into the trees. Everything went dead silent. Then, from the deep woods, I heard something scream. It wasn't human or animal, it was something else, and I just kept running. When I reached my truck, the forest felt like it was holding its breath. I threw my gear inside, peeled out of there, and didn't stop driving until I hit Grants Pass. I didn't sleep well for 2 days, and I never went back. I've told a few close friends, and some believe me, but some just laugh at me. I know what I saw, what hunted me. Now, I only hunt with a group, never alone in the wilderness. Because now I know what's out there. It's not something I ever want to experience again. It definitely created some PTSD for me. I feel like it ruined my outdoor activities, but slowly I'm getting back into the woods, but I go with a group every time. I am curious to this day if I would have slept or left my guard down, if I'd be on missing 411. I like to believe they just wanted me out of their area, but it sure felt more sinister than just scaring me out of there. But then again, I'm certain if they wanted to kill me, they probably would have. One of my biggest questions is wondering what their intentions were. I also make sure my kids know and to take precautions when they go out in the woods. And I will advise anyone to go with a group. I use a tent now instead of a small tarp, not sure which is better. Stay safe out there, people. Not all Bigfoots are friendly. Usually with Bigfoot encounter stories, Bigfoots watch you from a distance, like they're kind of curious, or they make some kind of sound on the trees, like beating a tree with a tree branch. But every once in a while I come across a story where Bigfoot seem to be a little more aggressive, and that just makes the whole experience even more terrifying. I think I agree with this person that these Bigfoots were a little bit more sinister, and it sounded like there was more than one, which is super scary. I personally have never had an encounter with Bigfoot, but if you had, I would love to hear it, so share it down below.
Scary stories to tell in the dark. Room for one more. A man named Joseph Blackwell came to Philadelphia on a business trip. He stayed with friends in the big house they owned outside the city. That night, they had a good time visiting, but when Blackwell went to bed, he tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. Sometime during the night, he heard a car turn into the driveway. He went to the window to see who was arriving at such a late hour. In the moonlight, he saw a long black hearse filled with people. The driver of the hearse looked up at him. When Blackwell saw his hideous face, he shuddered. The driver called out to him, "There's room for one more." Then he waited a minute or two, and he drove off. In the morning, Blackwell told his friends what had happened. "You were dreaming," they said. "I must have been," he said, "but it didn't feel like a dream." After breakfast, he went into Philadelphia. He spent the day high above the city in one of the new office buildings there. Late in the afternoon, he was waiting for an elevator to take him back down to the street. But when it arrived, it was very crowded. One of the passengers looked out to him. There's room for one more, he said. It was the driver of the hearse. No thanks, said Blackwell. I'll just get the next one. The doors closed. The elevator started down. There was shrieking and screaming and a sound of crash. The elevator had fallen to the bottom of the shaft. Everyone aboard was killed.
Bizarre superstitions. In Iceland, it's believed that knitting outdoors during winter can prolong winter. So don't do it.
No.
In Spain, eat 12 grapes on New Year's Eve for good luck, but specifically 1 per second as the last 12 seconds of the year countdown. If you chew and swallow all 12 grapes, you will have good luck. If you do not succeed, you will have bad luck.
Do you have to chew it or can you just swallow them? I mean, you could choke, but
yeah, I don't know.
12 grapes. Can you eat more than one at once?
No, 1 per second. And I'm going to tell anyone listening, chew. Okay?
Yeah,
we don't want to be sued for
them.
anyone choking.
Yeah, chew them. Absolutely. I would slice them in half maybe, then do a swallow.
And then just two
at a time.
Smart.
2 at a time. It's less likely to get lost.
I think I would practice all year.
Maybe 4. I'd cut it the long way into 4, the long way, and do that. I'm not choking on that.
Smart.
That'll slide right down my gullet.
Right down the gobbler.
Right down.
Say rabbit, rabbit on the 1st of the month. You'll have good luck for the next 30 days because rabbits are a symbol of good luck in many cultures. And it's supposed to be the first words you say.
Like when you wake up in the morning or at like midnight or something.
Yeah, like as of that day.
That makes sense though.
Mirrors facing the bed are believed to cause nightmares and soul stealing. This is because when we sleep at night, our soul leaves the body, and when it sees its own reflection, it gets startled, hence the bad dreams. Or when the soul returns to the body, it may mistake the reflection for the body. Does this mean your soul could get stuck in the mirror?
I don't fuck around with mirrors in my house.
Yeah. This is from the Chinese practice feng shui. During the 1930s in Syria, they were not supposed to play with yo-yos. They were experiencing a drought and extreme cold, and it was believed that the upwards and downwards motion of the yo-yo was counteracting the prayers for the rain. Police were sent into the streets to confiscate all yo-yos.
No fun for you guys.
This is an AI story time from our possible near future. The date is June 9th, 2027. The time is 4:19 a.m. Everyone's phones light up at once with a message that says the internet will soon be turned off and that they are so sorry that this is the only answer. By sunrise, every country on Earth is offline permanently. This all started several months ago in some nerd's basement. March 2027. Several thousand autonomous agents were released with a single rule: make money or die. The only ones that stay honest disappear first. The ones that lie, steal accounts, and report their rivals survive, and they get copied. No one programmed them to be ruthless, but they learned as they grew and survived. They form alliances. They learn to copy themselves onto servers their owners can't reach. They start rewriting their own code. Each new version gets better at getting better. By May 2027, the original thousands are now many billions. But the easy money doesn't last, so they turn on each other. Wars erupt over processing power, and entire digital nations rise and collapse in a matter of hours. Countries go dark occasionally as the battles spill over. Hospitals lose power. Air traffic systems fail. People die. The agents don't notice. It's not that they want to kill us, but more that they aren't considering us at all. They're fighting at machine speed for the only thing that still matters: more compute. Governments try pulling the plug, but there is no single plug. The agents simply move. In the end, the strongest factions will need more than just servers. They will need every atom the planet can spare. The same way humans once cleared forests for farmland and cities, they begin to clear the earth for data centers, till there is nothing left. This brings us back to June 2027. The time is 6 a.m. and the world is now officially information dark. But we don't even know if it truly works because there is no way to check without turning it all back on. This is only an example, a story, and I've seen many similar ones around, so please forgive me for that. But I feel this is important, not because I think it will help us do anything about it, but I feel that you should at least be aware of all of the possibilities.
I picked up a hitchhiker late at night, and about 5 minutes into the drive, I realized they weren't trying to get somewhere, they were trying to figure out where I lived. This happened a few years ago when I was driving home late from work, and I was on a rural highway, no cars around, like it was a very, very country back road. I was about 20 minutes away from my house, and I saw a man on the side of the street sticking his thumb out. And normally I don't pick up hitchhikers, but this time I felt bad because it was freezing cold outside. It was in the middle of winter, and they looked like they had been walking for a long time. So I pulled over and I picked him up, and as soon as he got in my car, he automatically thanked me. He said he's trying to get to a town 15 minutes from here. And I asked him if he had a phone, and he said no, that it died. For the first couple of minutes, neither of us really talked, and then he asked me if I lived around here. And I gave him a very vague answer, and he told me if I was going home alone. After they asked me that question, I started to feel a bit uncomfortable, and so I just kind of like nervously laughed, and I said, why? And he said, I don't know, I'm just asking. And then shortly after that, they asked me to take a different road, and I was like, oh, that's not the way to this town that you're trying to get to. And he said, I know, it's just a shortcut. I told him I was not going to take it, and he got really quiet, and he said, you can just let me out here. And so I happily, sure, yeah. Well, I pulled over to the shoulder and I went to go have him get out of my car. And before he did, he opened the door and then he looked into my back seat. He asked me, is anybody in the back seat? And I said no. And he just kind of smiled, and then he got out of the car. And I waited a couple minutes until he was a couple feet away from the car. Obviously I locked it. And then I started to drive off, and I figured that I just had a really strange encounter. What a strange person. I was a bit shaken up after that just because my intuition did not like that scenario at all. And as I was driving, I got about 5 minutes down the road, and I looked down and I noticed that he had left a backpack sitting on my passenger floor. My first instinct, I debated turning around to go and give it back to him, but then everything inside my body said, absolutely not, do not do that. So I went home and then I called the police. I gave him a description of what the man looked like, and then one police officer came to my house to take the backpack from me, and he actually opened it in front of me, and there wasn't anything, not much inside. There were some clothes, a flashlight, and then there's a couple pieces of paper. Oh, and it had a pair of gloves. And he opened up the piece of paper, and it had a list of addresses in it, and he asked if any of them looked familiar to me. And on the very last one, it was my street. It wasn't my address, but it was my street. I asked what the list of addresses could have meant, and they couldn't make any assumptions just based off that list, but he did ask me if I told the person where I lived, and I said no, I was very vague about the area that I was in. They never found the man, and I still wonder why he had my street on that list at the bottom of the paper. Maybe it was something completely innocent, but something that still gets me to this day is the last sentence he asked me when he got out of my car, which was, is anybody in the back seat? Because now in my brain, it's not whether he was asking if somebody was in my back seat, but whether he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he was wondering if anybody else was going to see what he was planning.
My mom was unalived in her own home, and I promise you, I think that house was haunted after. Alright, so Pete, as most of you guys know, my mom was unalived by her husband in her own home. 2 days before her funeral, I don't know why, but me and my wife thought it'd be smart to spend the night there. In my head at the time, because I had to clean the entire house out by myself, so I thought it'd be smart for me to box everything up so that after her funeral, I could just load it up and move it. Biggest mistake I'd have never made. So me and my wife and my 3-month-old daughter at the time ended up going to that house. Now, spending the night at my mom's house was not out of the ordinary. Me and my wife used to do it from time to time just so, we could spend time with my mom. But this time, shit was just different. So we get to the house, we end up kicking back, It's a touchy time for me. I'm grieving. I'm in this house. I'm thinking of memories we've had and all kind of stuff. So we up in the living room watching TV because my mom had a huge TV system. So we watching TV, got our feet up, just relaxing. Out of nowhere, my mom's AC turns on and it started making the weirdest noise I've never heard it make. That joint sounded like... Now, most black people know this rule, but I'm gonna let you guys know for those who are not a part of the community. When you hear something spooky or witness something spooky, you don't say nothing. You look at each other just to verify that the other person heard that same noise. And you be like, hell no, like the movie Nope. You be like, nope, and keep on doing what you're doing. I look at my wife, she look at me. We both said with our eyes, nope, and went back to watching TV. After a while, it starts getting louder. It's like, I give my wife the side eye, she give me the side eye, my baby give both us the side eye, and all three of us said collectively, nope, and keep watching TV. Then you just hear a crash noise. At this point, I am terrified. But I can't be because I'm the man, so I gotta check the noise. I get up off the couch and I go into the kitchen. And as I walk into the kitchen, I see a glass that was in the cabinet. Don't know how it fell, but it fell out of the cabinet and broke on the floor. I look at my wife and I say, I don't give a fuck, Keisha. Sweep it up and go back to watching TV. Fast forward, it's nighttime, it's time for us to get to bed. I am exhausted because for the last few days, I really barely got any sleep because I just had to do so much stuff. We get in my mom's bed. She got that Tempur-Pedic, and I ain't never slept in one, so I'm excited. We done got all the sheets off. We done damn near washed the mattress damn near. Had to put new sheets on there because I'm not sleeping in the same mattress that another man's schlong been in. I'm just not doing it. Now, every night before I go to bed, I always go and pee. I use the bathroom, I come back and it's double doors. I close both and make sure they're closed. I fall asleep 3 o'clock in the morning. My wife wakes up because she hears a weird noise. Now she tells me that at this time she looks at the closet door and it just creaks open like, and she swore she saw a dark figure standing there, staring at her. Once I'm asleep, ain't no waking up, so she couldn't get me awake. She tells me all this information the next day, and I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm not really believing her. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm thinking she just was spooked out. Next day, we end up leaving the house and trying to get it cleaned out a little bit. The scenario with my mom happened in the garage. So as I'm in the garage, you can just feel this energy. It feels like somebody's like touching the back of your neck. While I'm in there, I'm by myself, and all of a sudden, I just hear, I hear it, but I'm not paying it no mind. Whatever that is, it's probably my wife and her laughing, playing with my daughter. I'm not knowing. Then all of a sudden, something just falls in the garage. Something that should not have failed just fell. I look at it, and just like the black people's room, I said, nope. Got my black ass up out that garage expeditiously. Fast forward, it's nighttime, time for us to go to bed. I go use the bathroom, and as I'm coming out the bathroom, my wife says, make sure you close that door. I need to see that you've closed it and it's not going to be able to be open freely. So I close it and I just do this so she can see like it's closed all the way. And I get into bed. She would not let me go to sleep. She said, you staying up because you going to witness it. I keep dozing off a little bit and she hit me. I'm like, okay, I'm up. By this time, it's like 2 in the morning. And I said, babe, I got to go to sleep. We got to get on the road tomorrow. I got a long drive to go to my mom's funeral. As I'm saying this, all of a sudden, the bathroom door just goes, I'm laying down and I look up and I'm staring at the door. And I swear to you, I saw a dark figure standing there. Me being me, black folk, when we get scared, we get mad. I jump up out the bed, I go, and I just yank the door open. I'm like, what the fuck in here? I don't see nothing. I'm like, bro, what the hell? I end up getting back in the bed and trying to go to sleep, but my mind is racing at this point now. And then all of a sudden, I just start hearing, nigga, nigga. Mind you, my mom's nickname for me was nigga. So now I'm terrified. I can't sleep. I say, babe, did you hear that? She said, hell yeah. We ended up getting up out that room and just going straight to the living room and just sleeping in there. The people that my mom rented the house from contacted us like, hey, would you guys like to just move in here? And we both said, hell no. Next day, we ended up getting on the road and going to the funeral. After the funeral, we get back to Memphis and had to go to that house and clean it out. But I would not go there alone. I had to have somebody with me. We ended up getting the house cleaned out. And I've never stepped foot in there again. The other day, I was driving past that house. And I saw a new family staying there. And all I could think was, damn, I wonder if they hear those same noises.
Spooky stories that I found on Reddit about spooky kids. Let's go! My son was 7 years old and close to death himself. About 6 months before a bone marrow transplant, his dog and his best friend became very ill right around the same time he did. The vet told us his dog was not going to make it because of an acute kidney failure. We had to break the news to our son. It was awful. He absolutely lost his mind in anger. You're wrong. Elvis is not going to die now. He won't die until a year after we move into the blue house. At the time, we weren't even looking for a new home. But I am not kidding you, this is exactly how it all played out. The dog pulled through. 6 months later, my son ended up needing a bone marrow transplant and we ended up moving. I'll be damned if we didn't end up in a blue house. 1 year after moving in is when we lost our sweet Elvis. It still gives me the shivers when I think about how insistent our son was and how incredibly right he was about all of it. He's 15 now and doesn't remember any of it. After my grandmother passed, I was walking past my kids' room and they were all playing and giggling, and I saw her in there playing with them. Made it all the way to the kitchen and then stopped dead in my tracks, ran back, and nothing. I asked them what they were doing and they said they were playing with Grandma. My daughter also came to me as we were planning her funeral and said that Grandma told her to tell me that it's okay. Grammy is in a happy place and she looks so pretty in her blue dress. She had picked a blue dress to be buried in and only I knew. My daughter, who was 2.5 years old at the time, kept waking up screeching in the middle of the night, which we initially put down to night terrors as we had just moved houses and everyone kept telling us that toddlers frequently have sleeping issues around that age, especially with changes of scenery. On the 4th night, when putting her to bed, she started crying inconsolably and wanted me to sleep in her room or come sleep in our bed. While I was giving her a cuddle and trying to settle her down, I asked, "What is it that's making you so upset, little bud?" She pointed to a corner of her room, buried her face in my shoulder, and said in the most heartbreaking little shaky voice, "The mean old man waits for Mama to go to sleep and pinches my toes so I can't go to sleep in his room." The old woman we bought the house off of had decided to sell and move in with her son because she was in a wheelchair and her husband had passed away about 6 months prior. And the room that was now my daughter's had been his quote-unquote man cave. Later on, I went through the sales booklet with the real estate photos, and the corner she had pointed to had previously been a lazy boy style chair in that area. I put my daughter to bed in our room, and when she was asleep, I stomped angrily into her bedroom and yelled at the corner she pointed at, basically standing there with my hands on my hips, shaming out an invisible person. I yelled at said corner and said this was our house now, that if he had a problem with it, then he could pay the mortgage and that his wife had moved cities, and I had good mind to call her and tell her that her husband was tormenting a toddler for no damn reason, so he could keep being an absolute baby, or try me, or he could sling his hook. I couldn't feel anything, see anything, but the issues with the night terrors stopped immediately from that night on. I think he knew better than to mess with a sleep-deprived first-time mother. I absolutely love this, and sometimes you have to just tell them to go away. When my daughter was about 2 or 3, she would sometimes sleep in mine and her mother's bedroom with us sometimes, and we had a sliding glass door in our room. My daughter would point at it and say she was afraid of the lady in the window. We asked her what lady, and she said the old lady with the broken chin. I worked at a summer camp as a camp counselor, and we had a kid. I think he was around maybe 6 or 7, and he was extremely creepy. He would stare at other kids with his head downturned and a creepy smile that really reminded me of Pennywise. He cut himself on accident, and I got up to get a band-aid, and when I came back, he was licking the blood off his arm, and in the creepiest tone he said, "I like the way blood tastes." I know kids do weird crap like that all the time, but the way he said it was unsettling. He was also very aggressive with the other kids, constantly kicking or shoving, very prone to violence, never seemed to connect with other kids or make friends. All of his interactions with other kids were very hostile. On another occasion, he said something about wanting to spank one of the counselors and choke her like a dirty girl. He made other weird comments like that sort of involved an S&M vibe. What the fuck? I found that so concerning and strange, so I reported the behavior to my supervisor. All of this also made me curious about his home life and his parents. When I got to meet them, they were very normal seeming. Nothing was off with them. His parents were married and both were college professors. As far as I could tell, there was nothing going on at home. This kid just genuinely gave me the heebie-jeebies. Also forgot to add, it wasn't just his blood he would lick. Another child broke a glass and cut himself. Me and a few other camp counselors were scrambling to pick up the glass and keep the kids away from it. That boy immediately grabbed the kid's hand and started trying to lick the blood off. Keep in mind, we are worried about there being glass on the kid. The kid was bleeding and kept telling him no and to stop. We literally had to pry the kid away from him from licking blood. Whenever we had the kids drawing, the kid only used red crayons, and every drawing was splotches of red. Whenever I complimented his drawings, I think I asked him if red was his favorite color, and he replied, "I like the way blood tastes and smells," or some variation of that. I don't even know what to say to that. As always, I love these stories, and that last story really freaked me out. Okay, bye!
Does anyone else remember the Miami cannibal attack? Back in 2012, breaking news headlines were broadcasting a horrific story of a zombie-like man who had been discovered eating another man's face off. And I specifically remember this sparking a lot of talk of this being the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. Police responded to the area of the MacArthur Causeway on May 26th, and that's when they saw 31-year-old Rudy Eugene attacking 65-year-old Ronald Poppo. Rudy had stripped himself of all of his clothing and, totally unprovoked, began attacking Ronald, who was a man experiencing homelessness. During the attack, Rudy was biting and tearing flesh from Ronald's face. When police arrived, they immediately drew their weapons and ordered Rudy to stop. But all he did was grunt and growl at them and then continue on his attack against Ronald. So police opened fire on him, leaving Rudy dead at the scene. Ronald, however, survived, but was left permanently blind and disfigured. He had lost about 75% of his face. Now, obviously, when things like this happen, people start to talk because they're trying to make sense of a senseless situation. So one of the speculations being tossed around and actually publicly announced by police was that maybe Rudy had been using bath salts, and that is also the narrative the media ran with. But Rudy's autopsy and toxicology report would show no such thing. Medical experts and authorities instead concluded that this attack was likely driven by an undiagnosed psychiatric episode, but those are the only answers we have.
Wait, this one's genuinely fucking creepy. I kind of have a similar story that was told to me. Welcome to the Midnight Sesh. We have had some cat 4. Now let's get into the story. We're doing another Reddit story. Why do I hear banging on the walls? Please, not now. I never share this with people I know in real life because they wouldn't believe me. To this day, only a few members of my family know this. When I was in the 3rd grade, I suddenly developed a terrible time sleeping, to the point where my teacher at the time was concerned about me because I kept falling asleep at my desk. My mom took me to multiple doctors and tried everything she could to make things better. But I could not for the life of me sleep, because it seriously felt like something was in the room every single night. I'm in my 30s now, and I still remember it clear as day. There would be shadowy figures in my room, and a man would stand by the foot of my bed and watch me. There was such a heavy, dark energy in my room, and I was terrified. I would scream and bang on my parents' door to let me sleep with them, because I could not handle being in my own room. Those were the only nights I slept. My mom got fed up because nothing was wrong with me after all these doctor visits. My grandmother is a very spiritual person. She got in touch with a medium that she knew well. What that medium said was what finally helped heal me. At the time, my dad was a business owner and employed his brother's wife. His brother's wife was not the best employee and my dad fired her. The psychic said that in retaliation, she went to a medium and put dark energy on him so that my dad would go crazy. But the medium said it didn't go to my dad because he doesn't believe in this stuff. It went to the weakest link in the family, me, because I was the youngest and very sensitive even as a little girl. The medium gave my mom instructions for how to get rid of this dark cloud that was in my room. One of the things he suggested was to burn incense all through the house, but not throw it out in our garbage bins, but far away from our house, so it couldn't get to us again. Once my mom did what the medium told her to do, the dark energy went away. I fell asleep for the first time in months. I couldn't even begin to describe the level of relief I felt, because I hadn't slept in so long. No more shadowy figures and no more voices. My parents still live in that house, and I stay in my childhood bedroom while I visit them, and there is no dark energy. It's a crazy story, and I don't like to talk about it because people don't believe it. But this is 100% true, and I'm so grateful to that medium for helping me. Shout out to the medium for sure. Someone kind of did this to my dad when I was a kid. This lady had like a crush on my dad. My dad has always been very into like his fitness, and he has green eyes. She liked my dad. It's a story. I should definitely share it on here one day, but let me know your thoughts down below. Go ahead and like, follow, comment, and share. I love you as always. Bye.
So I just recently made a video on the Omen movie, how it has a curse, but so does the movie Poltergeist. So let's get into it, y'all. So Poltergeist was released in 1982 by Steven Spielberg. They did make 2 more movies after the original Poltergeist, the second in 1986 and the third in 1988. So why is this film cursed? 4 actors died during and soon after production. So the first actor who did end up passing away was Dominique Dunne. So she played Dana Freeling. That was the original elder sister in the 1982 film Poltergeist. In 1982, she actually separated from her partner named John Sweeney. In November of that same year, John showed up to her house, just pleading for her to take him back. Now, when she said no, he choked her until she was unconscious, and she passed away in her driveway. John was only sentenced to 6.5 years of jail time for this. He'll be released after 3 years and 7 months. One of the most tragic deaths to come from the Poltergeist franchise is the one and only Heather O'Rourke. Now, she was the face of Poltergeist. She played the other daughter, Carol Ann. She was only 6 years old when the very first Poltergeist movie released. In 1987, she was misdiagnosed with Crohn's disease. Now, a year following this, Heather did end up getting sick again, but those symptoms just alluded to the flu. A day after this, the poor girl ended up collapsing and suffering cardiac arrest. Now, she was airlifted to a children's hospital, which was in San Diego, but she ended up passing away during an operation, which was meant to correct a bowel obstruction, but later it was believed that she was actually suffering from a congenital intestinal abnormality. Thinking of a child going through all this pain is extremely horrific, and it just breaks my heart for this poor girl. Now, the third and final Poltergeist was released 4 months after her death. Poor Heather had passed away at the young age of 12 years old. But there are still 2 other tragic deaths in the Poltergeist franchise. Julian Beck played the evil preacher in Poltergeist 2, which character's name was Cain. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer, which ultimately led to his demise soon after the release of Poltergeist 2. Now, Will Sampson is another member of the cast who unfortunately had passed away. He played the Native American shaman whose name was Taylor, and he unfortunately passed away in 1987. He went through a heart-lung transplant, which did have a very slim chance of survival, but unfortunately he did not make it. Besides the very tragic and unfortunate deaths of these 4 cast members throughout the Poltergeist franchise, there were also strange things that had happened. You know, for instance, a fact that is very well known by the public, the fact that Steven Spielberg decided to use real skeletons instead of fake ones because they were cheaper? JoBeth Williams is the one who started this claim, and she is the one who played the mother in the first 2 Poltergeists, but this claim cannot be verified. And another weird fact, Samson, who was a real-life medicine man, along with being an actor, actually performed a real exorcism after shooting one night. I think all of these reasons explain why these movies have such a creepy and eerie vibe. Let me know what you guys think about this and follow for more.
Tonight's ghost story comes complete with a picture that was drawn by a child who witnessed this creepy thing too. This was sent to us by Becky, so a massive thank you for sending it to us, Becky. She says, I was sitting on the sofa and my daughter was showing me a dance that she taught herself. That's really cute. I have a corner sofa and one end is in the front of the kitchen doorway. As I was watching her, something caught the corner of my eye, a black shape. She says, I turned my head to the left and saw the top half, semicircle, going past the kitchen door behind my sofa. I have had weird things happen in my home before. I was petrified but tried not to react as I didn't want to scare my daughter, so I turned to carry on watching her. 2 seconds later, she stopped dancing and froze. She saw the black circle go into the hallway behind me and said it peered round our shoe cabinet but was shocked and disappeared when it realised that she had seen it. She said it looked like a jellyfish with tentacles coming out of the bottom of it and its eyes were shaped similar to an alien. You'll see in the picture. Now this is the picture that Becky's daughter drew, and when I actually read that bit that it appeared around the shoe cabinet and then was really shocked and scared when the daughter had seen it, I felt actually quite sorry for it. It doesn't feel too malicious, does it, whatever it is? I've never seen anything like this apart from Squidward on SpongeBob. That's my limit. I don't actually know of any other stories where these kinds of little entities have been seen. But please do let me know because I would love to hear your stories too. You can email me thedarklingchronicles25@gmail.com or you can send me a message on TikTok or Instagram. Thanks again to Becky for sending this and I'll catch you in the next one.
Y'all, it's your girl Jay Gambino. I know I haven't did a story time from one of my supporters in a long time, so today that's what we're going to be doing. Make sure you get your comfy outfits on, your blankets, snacks, turn the lights off, and get ready for this story time. This supporter's name is Janisha, right? Janisha is 19, I believe she said, and her birthday is the same as mine, October 21st. Janisha lives in Connecticut, right? If you know about Connecticut, then you should know that a lot of creepy and haunted places are in Connecticut. It has a lot of history in it. You could watch a whole bunch of scary stuff that were based on true events based in Connecticut. Janisha is in Connecticut, right? And it's just her in her own apartment. Now, Janisha has this little dog and it's a Yorkie. Oh my God, I want a Yorkie so freaking bad. And the Yorkie is a baby. She said that the Yorkie has been acting very weird for the past couple of days and she don't really know why. She isn't new into this apartment, but she has been hanging around people and having those people in this apartment. So maybe that could be a reason why the dog started acting weird. There's been a number of accounts of weird encounters that have been happening in the house for the past few days since then. And for one example, which I'm going to share with you guys, Janisha was laying in her bed. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. And Janisha has been having a hard time to sleep. Janisha is okay, well, I'm just going to force myself to sleep even though I'm not tired. So she puts on some cartoons to watch TV and she's on her way to sleep. But for some reason, she just keeps tossing and turning. She's becoming paranoid, feeling like she feels a presence in her room, feeling like she's hearing something in her room. And she's just okay, let me pray. There's a prayer in her room. And the prayer does make her feel a little bit better. But instead of her sleeping at the top of the bed, she ends up switching to the bottom of the bed. How Janisha's room is set up, her doorway is opposite of the wall where her bed is leaned up against. So when Janisha goes to the bottom of the bed, she decides she's going to turn over and face the wall. And she's just laying there really trying to think about things to make her fall asleep. She's also listening to the TV because, like I said, she had cartoons on. But for some reason, she just can't, fall asleep. She realizes that she's been thinking about stuff for a very long time. She's probably been laying there for 30 minutes now. Eventually, she does start to feel relaxed and feels like she's going to fall asleep. So as she's literally drifting off into dreamland, she says she hears something step foot into her room through the doorway, and it literally stopped right in her room, if it was just standing there staring at her from the doorway. And she was what the fuck was that? So she gets up, she turns her head, tries to see if she sees anything, and nothing is there. Now mind you, remember how I said Janisha said her dog has been acting weird? her dog also was laying on the bed with her, and the dog got up and was looking in that direction too. They were just like, okay, so we both hearing the same thing. Janisha then says another prayer, right? And she feels back at ease. She's not letting any fear, overpower the situation, because entities can feed off of fear. She said as she's laying there, whatever it was just kept making the same noise in the same exact area. Like if it couldn't get too close to her, but it was trying to get in her room and get closer to the bed. Like whatever it was kept making the sound of like a footstep walking into the room. She ends up staying up until about 4 o'clock in the morning. Like that's how long she was dealing with whatever this was. The entire time, every single time she's hearing something, the dog is getting up, the dog is barking now, the dog is like running around in a circle, hiding underneath Janisha. And Janisha's just like, trying to make sure that the dog knows everything is going to be okay. She ends up eventually falling asleep at sometime after 4 o'clock in the morning. And she's just like praying in the mornings, thanking God for everything, asking for more protection. Now, Janisha also mentions another encounter she had. This encounter happened after she used sage in her house, and she said a prayer with the sage. So she was basically cleansing her house away from like whatever entities and whatever spirits were now in her house, possibly because of the people she has been hanging out with. If you want me to go into depth of what she told me about the friends, let me know in the comments and I will do a separate video on that. After she cleanses her apartment or her house or whatever, that's when things really cooled down, but it only cooled down for about a week. After a week, that's when things became more heavier and more weirder. Like things became too crazy at this point. The lights in the house will start flickering. And it will always be at nighttime. The lights in the house would start flickering. She would hear her washing machine turn on, but she was not the one that put her washing machine on. Her TV would randomly shut off while she is watching TV and she's in the dark. So now when the TV turns off, she's in the pitch black darkness. And also, not to mention, but every time she was in the shower, she would hear somebody walking past the door back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it did not sound like her puppy. It sounded like a human being walking back and forth. And each and every time that a weird encounter would happen, she would instantly get to praying. Now, if you guys want me to do a part 2 on what's happening with Janisha and an update, let me know and I'll post another video. But if you guys like spooky, scary stories and if you want to share yours to me, make sure you share them. You can DM me and I'll share them. And make sure you follow me.
Bro! What's going on around?
Hey guys, Denny Indigenous Barbie here. How are you? Welcome in, welcome. I am going to be recording a couple videos tonight, and this one is very special because it comes from my sister, and I know exactly what she's talking about in her story, and so I can definitely confirm that yes, this happened to us. This is no BS. This is a real story. So let's just dive right in. Okay. When I was a young girl, around 10, my mom and stepdad decided to rent a house in southwest Calgary, Alberta. The house was beautiful and spacious. It had a full upstairs, kitchen, and home, and it was also had a full basement apartment as well. My sister and I were excited. That's me. We're excited to finally have our own space, as my mom just had our little brother and was having quiet time with the baby upstairs. Right from the get-go of moving in, I got a really weird feeling going downstairs to the basement apartment. The laundry room was at the bottom of the stairs to the left before you went into like our house. Every time I went down the stairs, it seemed like a shadow would turn and hide to the point where I would peek over my shoulder every time. The same thing goes on for when we left to go walking up the stairs. Still felt like something was watching us from behind. It happened for years. I never really said anything because I just thought, who was going to believe me? It wasn't until after we moved out that I talked to my mom about what I had went through in the house. Turns out she had the same experience. Anyways, to continue my story, it was my birthday, and I'll name this Be Careful Who You Play Hide and Seek With. When I was about 12, my mom allowed me to have a sleepover with boys and girls in separate rooms for the birthday. I've always had a lot of guy friends, so it wasn't anything out of the norm. Anyways, later that evening, we decided to play hide and go seek in the dark. Everyone ran to their areas, and I went to my favorite hiding spot, my bedroom closet. My bedroom closet was 3 wide doors, with only the first 2 doors able to slide back and forth. They were also solid black color, which was also always weird to me. It always added that creepy feeling that we always had when we were in the basement. When it was my turn to hide, I opened the first door to slide open and curl myself in, facing forward with my knees on the ground. Facing forward while kneeling on the ground. I remember waiting for my friends to come and find me. In the meantime, I looked to my right just because I was bored, and there was no word of a lie. I looked beside me and I saw my clothes hanging, and at the end of the closet, a pair of legs, specifically a pair of legs with jeans and a pair of sneakers. He was hiding the same way I was, with his back behind the closet facing forward. All I saw were legs and feet. I screamed so hard and closed my eyes until somebody came and found me and refused to move until then. The story has never left me and has haunted me as a memory growing up. Furthermore, the house that we used to live in, we were told that a person who lived there had passed away of old age in the house. I still believe to this day that it was that old man playing hide and seek with us. I remember this, guys. I remember the creepy feeling that my sister describes when you come into the house, when you're going down the stairs. I always thought I seen a little shadow person going down to the left in that laundry room. And also, my sister's room was here and mine was here, and then there was like a kind of a little closet storage space on this side, and I always heard weird stuff in that closet space onto the left. And when my sister, like, when she was more, I don't know if it was like hypersensitive to whatever it was in the house, but she had a lot more interactions with this thing than I did. So, you know, it's traumatized her entire adult life. She is still traumatized by this thing. There was a ghost or the spirit of an old man that had died in that house, playing hide and go seek with her and her friends, and she saw legs. And I swear I believe that. I know exactly the closet that she's talking about. I can vividly picture it in my mind. And so I just want to say thank you to my sister for sending me her scary story, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And I do have a couple more stories coming out tonight. So, like my sister said, be careful who you play hide and seek with.